How's it going, fight fans? Joey G from Wrestling Inc., and I am thrilled to be joined today by a man who needs no introduction. He's a writer, actor, podcaster, filmmaker, and he's also got a pretty sweet super kick, Kevin Smith. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today, brother.
Means the world to be here, man. Thanks for having. I rarely get a chance to talk about wrestling, so it's a delight for me because it's a newfound passion of mine.
Well, that's good to hear. That was actually kind of where I wanted to start. You know, back in October last year, pre-COVID, I guess if you want to call it,
Yeah.
AEW started their weekly television series Dynamite on TNT, and you and Jason Mewes were in attendance in the front row. Even got to be a part of a segment with one of the stars, Jack Evans. Can you just talk a little bit about how that came about?
Absolutely. Chris was good enough to be in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Sure.
I've also worked with Jericho on this movie we did called Kilroy Was Here, which isn't complete yet. I'd been on his podcast. Sorry, he was on my podcast, and I fell in love with him. I'm like, oh my God, this sweet Canadian kid. He's such a nice guy. Like, we come up similarly, but his dad was like super famous and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ted Irvine.
Yeah. So I dug him. I was like, you know, he's a good dude, man. I'm going to put him in something. So when I put him in something, I kept casting him as a bad guy. Like in Kilroy, he plays a real piece of shit. And then in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, he was the clan leader.
He's the clan leader. Oh yeah, the hater tots was a nice touch.
Thank you. Now, I hadn't seen any of Chris's work. Like I'd never seen him wrestle. Didn't know his personality. So I thought I was clever. I was like, I keep casting this real sweet kid as a bad guy. I'm casting him against type. Nobody would ever think to do that. Then I go to the match. Chris was like, hey man, we're doing an opening match for AEW. Like, you know, I'm in the flick. Will you guys come to the opening match? And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. Because we were promoting the flick anyway. We were going to be like, I think it was in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Already in New York that day. So we were just like hopped a train or some shit. And we were there pretty quick. So what had happened was when we said yes, WWE was also asking if we wanted to go promote Jay and Silent Bob Reboot there.
Yeah, sure. I believe it was Smackdown, which was premiering that week, right? Because it was their Fox debut.
I think so, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or is Dynamite another one?
Dynamite's the AEW. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Might have been. I'm not sure if it was Dynamite, but I remember it was a big deal because like this is seen by billions, like a football game. And, you know, the publicist on the movie was like, if you're going to do a wrestling show, do WWE for heaven's sakes.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, me and Jay were like, but Chris is our boy. And he came out and he did the movie and stuff like that. And like, I got no real ties to WWE. I got a direct tie to AEW. So we're going to go with this one. And so at first, the publicists were like, if you choose AEW, WWE is probably going to like take their offer back.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I get it. So be it. So then we said, we're doing AEW. Then the word came back. WWE's fine with that. You can do them as well. So I was like, all right, we're doing both. Fair enough. So we go to AEW, me and Jay, and we were doing that on was it a weeknight or something like
Wednesday, I believe. Yeah, Wednesday is when they kicked it off.
Because WWE was going to be on Friday, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to Washington, and once we get there, we wind up being in a lot more of the show than even Chris thought. You know, since we were there, and they were like, "You guys want to play?" We're like, "Hell yeah!" We went around doing the bits backstage. What are they called? The
segments, the promos.
Promos. That's it. I knew there was a name for it. And then we wound up going to the match. Now, my experience with the match, walking in to the match, like transformed my interactivity with wrestling. I've been around wrestling my whole life, always just right outside the parameters. A lot of my good friends were like hardcore into wrestling in 81, 82, 83, like Sergeant Slaughter, Jimmy the Superfly Snuka, that era and whatnot, Hulk Hogan, of course. Jimmy, what's his name? Sergeant Slaughter.
Yes.
Lived near us in our town. We'd always see his camouflage limousine.
Oh, how did you see it if it was camouflage, though, is my question.
Wasn't camouflage that well. Especially when it's trucking down the Garden State Parkway. It's kind of like, hey, it's got to be Sergeant Slaughter.
That must be him, yeah.
It's got to be. So, I'd been around wrestling my whole life, but never really interacted with it. And I'd been to like local wrestling meets, but I'd never been to the big show. So going into AEW, was the first time. AEW, that's called Dynamite, right?
Yes, that's the one.
My bad. I was saying WWE was Dynamite.
Oh, no, you nailed it.
So as we walk in, the first thing that occurs to me, as I would say 90% of the place like goes nuts, is like, holy cow, we share a lot of audience with these cats. And we went to our seats and people were like going nuts. It was really a nice welcome. I honestly thought that it was like, well, I guess everyone's paid and they must pay them to give us a nice welcome, because why would they otherwise? And later on, Jericho was like, those are real human beings, dude. And he's like, they just happen to know your work. And I was like, get out of here. So they sat us down and we were like ringside and stuff. And man, I fell in love. You can watch my face during the performance. And I'm like a kid at Christmas. I'm lighting up and I'm there. I become an instant mark. I'm concerned for what's going on in the bodies that are flying at me and stuff like that. Like my reactions are absolutely genuine. So much so that like they had set up a bit like on the floor. And when it started happening, I was like, move, this poor woman. Like, it was like enlightening as hell. Like we were only supposed to stay for like the first half hour or something like that. And Jay's like, you ready? I was like, I am not. I stayed for the whole show. Like all of it was just beautiful, man. And so, we're engaged with the show itself. I wasn't engaged with social media. But meanwhile, like we were trending because of that. Like,
oh yeah,
because we were all over the show and stuff like that. And that, I only tell that part of the story because it affects the next part of the story. So we have a blast. Our AEW night is like, this is fantastic. So much so that I say to Jericho, I was like, don't like they let movie people in this sometimes. Can't me and Jay put on an outfit and fight? He's like, we're trying to keep our league real, man. We're not going for the gimmicks just yet. Says the king of the gimmicks.
Says the king of the gimmicks. Yeah. No joke, though. You know that a really good tag team for AEW, Bluntman and Chronic, would probably squeeze right in there.
That's what I said to him. And I think he was being like, basically he was being kind, but saying like, you do not want to put on the outfit, bro. He's like, the day you're ready to put on the outfit, we'll do it and stuff.
That's fun.
When Chris came out to like wrestle, that was the great illumination for me, because like he's a bad guy. I had no idea as he's coming out. Some people are cheering, some people are booing. He gets into the ring and he's like a real asshole. And I'm like, oh, I'm not clever at all. I only typecast the guy as a villain in movies. This is what he does. No wonder he was so good. So it was bliss to watch him in his element. I honestly felt like, wow, podcasting is his element. He's really good at it. He's very engaged, interesting.
Oh, I agree.
Any topic. But like that would have been like, somebody meeting me like, on the set of, say, Comic Book Men and being like, oh, that's what he does. I get it. He talks to his friends around a table. That's his job in life. And then I brought him to a movie set and they're like, Ben Affleck, like you make movies? This is nuts. So me seeing Jericho in his element was like a rediscovery of Chris, where I'm like, oh, this is who you are, what you do. Like, holy crap, man. So it was fun on that level as well, of like, oh, my friend is fucking famous, man.
Yeah.
He's a goddamn legend. And I knew he was big in the world of wrestling, but like I knew AEW is a startup league. We walked into a building that was packed to capacity and he was the rock star.
Oh yeah, he went in as champ. I mean, he's the one that they put all their cards behind, and for good reason too. I mean, like you said, his work is untouchable at points.
And he's having such a good time with it. That's clear. Like, just whether it's into, Le Champion, a bit of the bubbly.
The bubbly.
He's just having a grand time with it. Like, it's unfair to say, like, this is what he's supposed to be doing because this is what he was doing. So he's so good. I'm discovering it for the first time. Anybody who's like Jericho for years is like, yeah, bro, that's what Jericho
Well, may I say that you definitely got some good work out of him in Reboot, because that was probably my favorite scene in the movie. Listen, I want to stay on Jericho because I know you guys have a relationship. I just want to ask real quick because you already mentioned it. I believe WWE did end up pulling their invitation.
Yes, thank you. I think I completely lost the tether of that story.
We could just thoughts on that. I mean, it's not a move unlike them to do that, but just your thoughts from that perspective.
It was at first, like, it was strange to me that they said, oh, okay, you could do AEW and do us. Because at first they were very like one or the other. And once we were like, well, we're sticking with our boy, they're like, well, you could do both. And so, I was like, all right, that's nice. It's nice to know we were wanted by both camps. The morning after we did AEW and we were trending and stuff like that, my publicist called to say, like, WWE pulled their offer. They weren't shitty about it, but they said, you guys were all over AEW last night, and like that would be weird for them if 2 days later you were all over WWE. So they were like, sometime down the road we can revisit this again, but it's not going to happen Friday.
Sure, yeah.
So I told Chris, and Jericho was like, you are the first casualty of the wrestling war.
It's so sad that we had to lose Jay and Bob in this violent brand war now.
Cannon fodder. First one's out, man. Who figured? Who would have known? My feelings on it were, I was not like insulted. I completely like understood in as much as they see AEW as a competitor now. It would have been gracious to be like, oh, okay, do that and do us. But as much as like, I didn't take it personally, but I did derive a little bit of pleasure out of the fact that like, they're scared of my boy. They're scared of my boy's league. Go Jericho. So there was a bit of delight that came from it for him. But personally, I was like, boy, like Vince McMahon is the hard guy that they say for all these years. Like, heavens. Because somebody said, like, that went right up to the top, bro. Like, that. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, there's no way that Vince didn't have anything to do with that decision because it involves Chris as well.
Right.
So, I was like, oh, my. At the highest halls of power in WWE, me and Jay were discussed.
You were discussed, yeah. You guys are top draws in the company, in the business now, baby.
I mean, not for them, not for WWE. They're like, no way, man. I mean, I think it was like the next week they brought on The Rock, so it's like not like they were hurting for not having us or something like that. But it was really like I've never been at the center of the late night wars or the soda wars, but to be at the epicenter, ground zero for the wrestling wars was something else.
Well, I'll tell you what, your loss will not go in vain because it will
please remember me, people.
Remember me, people. Let's just jump ahead now. So we're living in this era that Cody Rhodes from AEW called the empty arena era because of the ongoing pandemic. I hate to call it that.
He was watching it was his lady that I saw get hurt.
Brandy, yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's where I was like, hey, time out. Like, yeah,
time out.
This lady got literally hit by another body, and nobody else seemed as like concerned as I was. There was definitely an interest, and there were sides, but I think I was the only one that was like, "Get a doctor! The lady has been hit."
Well, hey, listen. This is why some of your movies are so emotionally resonant because you care, man. Don't say that you don't care. You care.
I bought it. I'm a sucker for a hard case.
Hey, I cover this stuff every week, and every week you'll catch me crying in the bathroom at some point, forgetting.
I get it, man. And I get it. Like, it's crazy. Like, who was it? Like, what was it? Not Bert Kreischer, but what's his name? Just last week, he was trending on Twitter because he kind of went after wrestling.
Was it? The comedian you're talking about?
Yes, Christina Pashitsky's man.
Right.
whose name escapes me right at this
Yes,
point.
I know who you mean. I can't think of it right off the top of my head today. I know Patton Oswalt said some nice things about wrestling today in a podcast with Joe Rogan. So
did he? I did not get the impression like that my man was like literally like, "Ooh, I don't like wrestling." He was joking about it in an affectionate way.
Yes.
That clearly indicated like he knows a lot about it and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I could see like there being a whole industry around the industry of folks that are passionate about it. What it reminded me of is the passion and enthusiasm of the comic book crowd.
Oh, sure.
It
Absolutely.
makes sense because it's just that applied to a sport, like applied to an athletic competition that one can build and weave a narrative through. You can't really, like when you're watching football and baseball and hockey, the narrative is implied. Like he came from hard scrabble towns and what must be going through his mind as he does this right now. With wrestling, they'll tell you exactly what's going on in their heads, and they'll build a narrative right around the fight, the ongoing fight. And so I get it. Like now, it's not for years I didn't get it. I just never really interacted with it. But now I understand it completely to the point of I understand why it's been as big as wrestling is big for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
It is a soap opera for like those of us who like watching dudes
and ladies. Now the ladies, women's wrestling has taken a huge step forward in these last 5-6 years. They main evented their biggest show, WrestleMania, in WWE a couple years ago, and you can't do that if the scene hadn't changed enough. So it's awesome to see those types.
So were you with the scene for the change, like in the 80s, like when my friends were way into it and whatnot? Women were few and far between. Cyndi Lauper was.
Rock and Wrestling Connection, baby. I was. I'm an '89 millennial boy, but I still know all my history about the early '80s and the Fabulous Moolahs and the Cyndi Laupers at Mania. So, it's a fun. It's always been, and I grew up a theater actor myself, so it's a fun world to connect to because that's what it is. This is theater in the round, and there's also a television aspect to it too.
In the era of an empty arena, as Cody Rhodes was talking about,
yes,
I've seen 2 matches in the empty arena. For somebody who hasn't had lifelong experience watching, it's not a massive adjustment that I ever had to make. What is it like for somebody like you who's like the audience is the third man in the ring or woman in the ring?
It's a little bit it's different. I don't want to say I dislike it because I know a lot of people who do like it, and that's not how I base if a thing is good or not, whether just my opinion. I kind of see how it goes. AEW is doing some cool things where the wrestlers that they're not using, they put in the crowd to create that background noise. Other companies are not, and it is that third element that's missing. I mean, it's the two competitors against each other, and the fans are there to show support for the babyface and the heel. So it is different, but they are working with what they can work with. And it's funny that you brought that up because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I've always listened to your one-man shows where you go and you give your input and your insight, and I've always found it very profound. And as someone who I think is very profound, what do you think about a WWE and AEW pushing forward to provide fans with this content during COVID? Now, do you think it's worth the risk for them to put on new shows, or do you think or do you think that they are doing a good deed by trying to entertain us in these tough times?
I think everyone looks for a welcome distraction at this period. And to have life interrupted as it has been for so many people, it's always, welcome to find some foundational aspect where you're like, oh, at least we still have this.
Mm-hmm.
So with, wrestling coming back early as it did, I never once was I like, this is wrong, this needs to stop.
Sure.
Especially because they were like, there's not going to be a crowd. That was the only thing that I bump into because I was like, well, I'm no wrestling expert, but having been to one match live, I felt like the crowd was absolutely indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they created the passion, the enthusiasm. They provide the belief. It's they are the third person on the canvas. It's incredible.
Yeah.
More so than like most live interactive experiences I've seen. Even, you know, they've talked about now, can football come back without an audience? Can baseball come back without an audience? I think absolutely. And I think people will be content to like watch a game like that. I don't think those athletes thrive on the audience. Most of them never seem to look at the audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been the thing that bugged me about like going to a hockey game. They never look at you. You could be on the glass pounding, and they're like so well trained. They play the game. They're getting paid a lot. I get it. It's the opposite with wrestling. Like you could find yourself getting screamed at by the guy in the ring or the lady in the ring, and find yourself being a part of the show. So when I heard like they were coming back without an audience, I was like, is the audience like, is that, I understand like, hey man, at least we're getting matches, but like, are you suddenly viewing it through a completely different prism that makes you go like, you know what, I'll wait. Like I'd rather wait until, so far doesn't seem to be the case. Everything I saw on social media when it came back, they were happy to have it, even at this empty arena version of it and stuff. So, you know, I'm all for anything that helps distract everybody who's stuck at home. The only concern would be for the wrestlers themselves, and I assume, hopefully, that, you know, if they're being put back to work or being asked to go back to work, that they're getting tested like crazy.
That is the assumption. I know they're doing, you know, both companies that are still going, WWE and AEW, and there's other ones too, companies that kind of do tapings and then, you know, release their TV, you know, do 8 hours in one night and then just release an hour a week on TV. But AEW and WWE have been going live, so they've been doing, you know, AEW's actually been giving the COVID test, where WWE has been checking temperatures. It's a whole process, and it does seem like they're trying to be as safe as they can.
They are going first, technically. Like every other sporting arena, event, team, franchise is going to be paying close attention, because here they are. They're back at it in wrestling, and let's see how, A, the audience interacts with it, B, what the health implications are. You know, they get to be a guinea pig in a weird way. And at the same time, bunch of people who aren't necessarily team oriented or aren't necessarily seasonally oriented, because wrestling seems to go year round, correct?
Oh yeah, no, there's no off season for these guys.
So that's why, like, them coming back first, I could see amongst people that view sports, that would be more meaningful probably than any other sport. It's a sport people have interacted with since childhood, and a sport they get to interact with year round. They never put it down. It's never like, all right, it's no longer baseball season, we got a year until the boys of summer. Wrestling is just like, you turn it on. It's like the internet. Once you turn it on,
the internet, once you turn it on, it's a very, very, very good viewpoint on it. Kevin, this has been great. I got one more question for you. A couple of weeks ago, you showed up again on AEW. They did this great little segment with the Bubbly Bunch with Jericho. You got to share in a viral video that also featured Ted Irvine, Gabriel Iglesias, Lou Ferrigno, which was a while back, and then you and Jason showed back up. What was that like? Did they reach out to you in regards of being in the video?
Yeah, Chris had texted me, and he's like, we're doing this video. Did you see the Stuntman video that was online last week? I said, oh, yeah, it's funny. He's like, we're going to do one. And I was like, oh, fantastic. He goes, can you provide me with a clip? I said, absolutely. And I was like, can I do it to Silent Bob? He said, yeah, can you get Jay? And I was like, I think I can. Suddenly, I did it. It was on the absolute last day. He texted me in the morning. He goes, I need it by 10 o'clock. So I found the hat with the hair on it and stuff, went out on my deck and did a quick shot. And then I sent it to Jay, and I was like, give me something like this. And he sent it, and boom, we were off and running. But I had no idea. I thought it was just basically folks from AEW. Like, I didn't know Ted was going to be in it. I didn't know he was going to be in it. Like, those were big moments for me. Like,
oh, yeah. I mean, as a
space with a hockey legend, for heaven's sakes.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, as a big hockey fan myself, you were talking about interacting with hockey players. I mean, I've gone to enough Blackhawks games, and Patrick Kane has never noticed me, but he will one day. Kevin, honestly,
sometimes based on history, I don't know if you want Patrick Kane to notice you.
That's true. You're probably right. Yeah. If anything, I want him to see me just so he could instantly forget about me like that.
Yes.
Kevin, this has been such a pleasure. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and Wrestling Inc. I hope you and yours are well during this time, and thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate it.
Means the world. So far, me and mine are great here. Hopefully you and yours are great there. Shout out to Jericho, because tonight he's dropping of his Jericho, a Talk is Jericho podcast.
Yes.
Is episode 666. So we did a watch along of Damien Omen 2, and it starts on his show and then heads over to Smodcast. Like, we split it up and stuff.
Very cool.
It's very fun. I know he's primarily known in this world, and rightfully so, and throughout the world, as a wrestler. My first introduction to him as a person was as a podcaster. So I always want to plug that work for him as well.
No, absolutely. Listen, while we touched on that, just real quick, I believe you two guys trademark something. Are you guys going to be working on a podcast together soon too, without spoiling anything?
We are. We're still trying to figure out if it's grains and greens or greens and grains. But the idea is, like, we've done it now 3 times where we just kind of sit there and do a commentary track for a movie that we, didn't have anything to do with. And we did.
Omen 2 is a great spot to start. I tell you what.
That is so smart, man. Oddly enough, I was like, shouldn't we start with Omen? And he's like, we both love Omen 2 so much. So we jumped right over Omen and went right to Omen 2. But there are a lot of movies that we share in our history that we've deeply loved that some people have, like, pushed away. Bad News Bears, naturally, was one of those.
Sure.
As was Omen 2, or as will be Omen 2. Pulp Fiction, like, everybody knew and loved that movie. So that was the one I think we had the biggest interactivity with. But it's just fun. And like, he sits there and drinks, and I sit there and smoke. And, slowly the analysis of the movie probably gets sillier and sillier. But I'll be honest, he was on it the whole time, even when he drinks. And, you can see Chris when he gets some of the bubbly in him and stuff like that, or a lot of the bubbly in him. He can he's a Canadian kid. He can handle his liquor and stuff. So even though I'm getting very blazed, he's still on point with the commentary, and he brings you right back into the movie. He's going, okay, right now they're at Ygal's wall. And what's important about this is we learned in the beginning of the movie, and I'm like, motherfucker, are you working from a script? Like, that's unfair. I thought we were just freebirding this, kind of like loosey-goosey.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he just had the whole screenplay with him. He's like, no, it says right here, clearly.
He's well studied, man. He's, what he reminds me of? He reminds me of a dude who's like they're going to call me an athlete, or they're going to call me like a jock or something like that. And I'm not that. So I'm going to keep up my other interests as well and show him that I'm not one thing. And he's not. He's a fucking renaissance man.
Yeah. I mean, he could literally do it all. I mean, he just dropped a Kiss cover song, and I'm like, God damn it, is there nothing you can't do? Like,
I know it makes one jealous, where you're like, oh, he could do a lot of things I could do, plus things I can't do, like wrestle and play music. Like, fuck.
Well, Kevin, you play music with your films. I look forward to what you got coming up in the future. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
What am I plugging these days? That Kevin Smith Club. If anyone's interested, they can find me there.
All right, Kevin, really appreciate it. I'm going to too sweet and screenshot us to take us out. If you want to give me one too, just throw it out.